Good day, everybody. Welcome once again. I'll be solving a question on bearing, and this question says a boat sails from port X to port Y, 12 kilometers away from port X, on a bearing of 60 degrees. It thereafter sails to port Z, 30 kilometers away from port Y, and on a bearing of 125 degrees. Calculate A, its distance from the starting point, and B, its bearing from the starting point. Let's sketch this diagram. Now a boat sails from port X, so let's draw port X. Let's call this port X. 12 kilometers, okay, to port Y on a bearing of 60 degrees. So 60 degrees, that's somewhere here. Then we join to this, and we are told it's 12 kilometers. This is port Y. Then from port Y, a boat sails from port X to port Y, 12 kilometers from port X, on a bearing of 60 degrees. It thereafter sails to port Z. So from here it sails to port Z, 30 kilometers away, on a bearing of 125. From here to here is 90. So 125. This cannot be. It cannot fall within this quadrant. It can't fall within this quadrant. So we have to go. We have to extend beyond the next quadrant. That's 125. So then we draw a straight line. We are told it's 30 kilometers away. So let's make it longer than this other one. Let's make it longer like that. Now if this is 90, if this is 90, or rather the whole of this angle is 180. The whole of this angle is 180. 180. So if this is 125, that means this angle will be 55. Because 180 minus 125 is equal to 55 degrees. So this angle here is 55. Remember, this is 60 degrees. If this is 60 degrees and this angle is alternate to this angle, if this is 60, this angle also will be 60 degrees. So the whole of this angle Y is 60 plus 55. That is 115 degrees. So the whole of this angle is 115 degrees. So let's join this. We need to form a triangle with it. Let's join it to this. So let's join it like that. Now 115, this is 12 kilometers. This is 30 kilometers. This is Z. Now it says distance from the starting point. This is the new location of the ship. This is where the ship is, and this is the starting point. This is the starting point. This is ship, where the ship is right now. So distance of the ship from the starting point. Now since this is not a right angle triangle, see 115, it's not 90 degrees. 115 is not a right angle triangle. We can only use cosine rule here. Cosine rule. So cosine rule states that x, since we are looking for xz, it becomes xz square is equal to xy square plus yz square minus 2 times xy times yz times cos y. So xz squared becomes xy is 12 kilometers, so that's 12 squared, plus yz is 30, that's 30 squared, minus 2 times xy is 12 times yz is 30, times cos y, the angle of y is 115, cos 115 degrees. So xz square is equal to 144 plus 30 square is 900 minus 2 times 12 times 30, That's 720. 360 times 2, 720 times, let's enclose this in bracket, times cos 115. It's in the second quadrant, so cos is negative, minus 0. Okay, let me see my calculator. Cos 115, that's minus 0.423. Let's say minus 0.42. okay, let's leave it at this. So xz squared equals 144 plus 900, that's 1044. Minus times minus is plus. 720 times 0.423, 720 times 0.423, that's 304.56. that's 304.56. So xz squared is equal to, so adding this together we have it becomes 1044 plus 304.56. that gives us 1348.56. so xz becomes square root of, because there's a square here, so when you square both sides, you take square root of both sides, becomes square root of 1348.56. so xz is equal to, let's get our square root. So it becomes square root of 1348.56. that gives us 36.722. 36.72 kilometers. So that's distance between x and z. Now the next question says the bearing from the starting point. The bearing from the starting point is bearing of z from x. So the first thing you do, look for the line joining x and z. This is the line. Since you are measuring from x, you measure from here to the line, from this point to the line. So that becomes 60 plus this other angle. We don't know what it is, so let's call it theta. Let's call this angle theta. So bearing of z from x is equal to 60 degrees plus theta. We don't know what theta is, so let's get theta. Now since this is not a right angle triangle and it's not a right angle triangle, we already know xz as, our xz is 36.72, that's 36.72 kilometers. We can use sine rule. We can use sine rule to get theta. So to get theta using sine rule states that yz over sine theta, this sine theta you are seeing, is equal to xz over sine y, that's this side over sine of the angle facing it. So it becomes yz is 12 over sine theta is equal to xz is 36.72 over sine y, that's sine 115 degrees. So that becomes, when we cross multiply, we have sine theta times 36.72 is equal to 12 times sine 115. Sine theta is equal to, divide both sides by 36.72, it becomes 12 times sine 115 over 36.72. that's sine theta is equal to 12 times sine 115 is 0. Sine 115 0.906 times 0.906 divided by 36.72. That gives us that becomes 12 times 0.906. That gives us 10.872. 10.872 divided by 36.72. So that becomes divided by 36.72. So that's 0 point sine theta is 0. 0.296. So theta is arc sine or shift sine 0.296. Theta is equal to so shift sine 0.296. That gives us 17.22 degrees. So bearing of the ship from the starting point equals 60 degrees plus 60 degrees plus theta, that's 17.22. That becomes 77.22 degrees. Thank you very much for staying tuned till this moment. I'll see you in my next video. Thank you. Bye.